In today's frenetic world, we rarely have an opportunity to hit pause and reflect. I'm stepping out of the rush to reflect on the things that matter most, and I would love for you to join me. Take a deep breath. Welcome to the Forest Sessions. Okay, this one is a little bit more from a psychological lens. That's the product of a lot of inner work that I've done and continue to do. A lot of therapy, a lot of working through a lot of my inner issues, which so many of us are struggling with today. And this came out after like a lot of work and contemplation on what I've been going through and what I still go through in so many ways. And I think it's extraordinarily relevant. And I think will be relatable to so many of us. So I just thought it would be really worthwhile to share this with you. And what a privilege. So thank you again for being a part of this and being here with me so that we can talk these ideas through together. It goes like this. Many of us walk around with an internal void. There is a lingering sense of emptiness, of an ancient desperation for completion, satisfaction, contentment. We want to feel okay. That's really what we want. And we seek this elusive sensation of completion in a vast variety of different ways because we naturally, again, we sense this feeling of void, like not enoughness, and I have to do, and I have to figure out a way to fill it. But while the circumference of a circle peg might cover the area of the square hole, because it's big enough, it simply won't fit. Right, so you have a hole that's in the shape of a square. You can have a peg that, the area of the peg covers the hole, but it won't fit in because it's just a different shape. There will always remain a jarring sense of dissonance. A pit covered over is not a pit filled. It remains just as empty as before. So perhaps the first step in the healing process then, and this took me a long time to realize, and honestly, I'm still on that journey like so many of us. The first step in the healing process is beginning to learn the shape of this inner void. Right? So to identify it is already the first thing, but then we have to figure out what its shape is, or else we'll never figure out how to fill it. If we have any hope of filling the deep hole in our chest, which is what trauma feels like often, we need to discover its nature, the unique contours of its jagged edges. To use another analogy, identifying the shape of the missing space in the Hawaii beach scene that enables us to sift through the pile of puzzle pieces and find just the right one, the one that needn't be stuffed in forcibly, the one that just fits. We have to find the right piece that is a perfect fit for the shape of that space that's missing in the puzzle. But shape isn't the only factor in identifying the right puzzle piece. Because while there may be any number of pieces in this box that feature this particular form, they may portray the green of the palm trees, the blue of the oceans, or the white of the boat, but you're working on the yellowish pink of the sunset, right? So shape matters, but color matters too. So there are these two elements in order to figure out, let's say a person's putting together a puzzle, and we want to find the piece that fits in that space that's missing. There are two aspects, right? There's the shape of the piece, but it also has to be the right color. So what does this all mean, right? Here's what I mean. For many of us, myself included, the shape of our inner void is an intense lack of self-worth. Right? That's really where it stems from. This could be for any number of reasons, and today the generations are becoming more and more sensitive. We go through more and more. We live in an incredibly complicated world with the advent of social media and so many of the different ways that there's a disconnect between our generation, earlier generations, educational systems, parenting technique. There's so many different factors that may factor in to leaving a person with a feeling that they're not good enough. They're just not inherently worthy. From the incessant chatter of the inner critic on the one hand of the spectrum to the violent roar of self-loathing on the other, which so many of us so often feel, many of us suffer from intense waves of a deep insecurity. In response, we seek external validation in a million ways. We feel compelled to earn a sense of worth, right? To prove to the world that we matter. Because that's what the pit is, that's what the void is. And so we're trying to fill it, and we have to figure out a million ways to matter, right? To be worthy. And so we set out to accomplish this, to achieve that, to assume this role, to attain that social status, etc. And yet, while we have identified the shape of our void, right, understanding, for example, that it isn't physical gratification that we lack, although the pursuit of physical gratification can itself sometimes serve as a strategy to achieve a sense of worthiness, we figure it out, like there's something deeper going on, right? There's an inner void that we feel, but we may have misjudged the color. Meaning to say that we figured out which shape of the puzzle piece is going to fit in that spot. We realize we have an inner lack of worth and we're looking to fill it, and we try to do that in a million ways, but we misjudge the color. Because in showing up as part of a desperate search for validation in a mask, it is only this impressive mask of successful adult that receives the validation, while the love-starved child inside, the layers of our personality ruptured by a massive crater, remains ever unseen. Meaning to say, again, it's a bit complicated, but the person identifies, okay, there's a sense of lack, like I have a void inside of me. I have to fill it. And what's the lack, the void, is because I just don't feel naturally worthy. And so what we do is, essentially, we go out and try and matter. And we try to do that in any one of a million ways. But ultimately, in a certain sense, it's like this whole motivation to matter, to be worthy, is itself the internalization of this voice that we have telling us that we don't matter. We don't matter essentially, so we have to figure out a way to matter, but that's not the point. We try to build up an image of, okay, here is a person that matters, in whatever way that we do that. And so that image will get tons of love. That image will get lots of likes on social media. That image will get a lot of support and a lot of validation. But that's not really what the issue was. The issue wasn't that you hadn't earned your worth. The issue was that you hadn't recognized that you were already worthy. And so lots of times we can have people who put so much work into the image. And like, okay, on paper they matter. And they can check off all the boxes, like here's my portfolio, here's what I accomplished. But they still feel that void. They still feel that lack of essential worth. Because that not only didn't mitigate this feeling of the void, it actually served, crazily enough, to intensify because it was built on that faulty premise. In this sense, the puzzle piece may fit, but it is simply the wrong color. In what can be a confounding experience, like we just mentioned, the recognition we earn, all the praise, the cheering audiences, the adoring fans, the admiration in whatever form, does absolutely nothing to grant us the completion we seek. It just doesn't work. Paradoxically and quite counterintuitively, this void can only be filled when the masks are finally, mercifully dropped. Not intensified, when they're dropped, and the real self is disclosed in all of its fragility, rawness, and vulnerability. And it's exactly counterintuitive to what we think. We think that if we reveal our real selves, like the part that's flawed and the part that's limited and the part that's like not so beautiful and looks perfectly perfect, we think that, well, that's what caused me to feel this lack of self-worth, because that's why I wasn't worthy. And it's like, no. It's exactly the opposite. It's precisely when we take the step off of that cliff edge, that's how we perceive it, and we think we're going to take a step off and show the world who we really are, and we will dead drop, right, all the way down to the bottom. It's precisely when we do that the most incredible things happens. We immediately sprout wings and we soar. Immediately. Because that is the part of us that needs the validation, not the part of us that pretends to be perfect, but the part of us that's able to be real with our humanity. When the doors of our inner world are flung open again, this time not for the purpose of allowing a mask-wearing portrait of an animated adult exuberance to charge out and prove its worth by conquering the world, but simply to reveal a small child in the corner of his room, hugging his knees with head bowed and tears in his eyes. It is then that healing becomes possible. Only then can healing become possible. This is the whole thing, in a certain sense, not the whole thing, but this is a crucial element of narrative therapy, is that there's a space of non-judgment and support, where a person can finally just be open, but radically, truly open. There used to be a time when we didn't have therapists, and like everyone survived because we used to have a culture where this was okay. Like this was the norm. This is what a friend used to be. Now it's like you have to acquire a friend, so you go and pay a therapist to sit and listen to you. But this is what a friend should have been, where there's no walls, there's no like sort of external masks. It's just real human beings who don't expect perfection from themselves or others in institutional, organizational culture, which doesn't expect perfection from students, which doesn't expect perfection from really anybody, but just recognizes what it means to be human, what the human being's capabilities are, not despite, but specifically because of all the limitations and the challenges and the roughness of the edges of the human condition. And there's just radical acceptance there, and it's like, yeah, okay, this is par for the course. Like this is normal, this is normal. And until we can do that and bring that part of ourselves into relationships, whether it's husbands and wives, whether it's friends, whether it's students and teachers, or in any other relational aspect, so there's going to be something in us that no matter how much we think we're feeling it, because we're showing to the world like, look, I matter. But that's not the part of you that needed to know that it matters, because that's a mask. The part of you that needs to know it matters is not the impressive part. It's the part of you that already matters, despite the fact that we think that that's the part of us that's the most shameful, that needs to be hidden away. It's precisely the opposite. When that part of us is seen and valued, when our real selves, not anything spectacular perhaps, but worthy, and here's the key point, in essence is accepted and validated, that is when the pit starts to be filled. That is when a puzzle piece of the right size and color satisfyingly fills its rightful space, slowly but surely completing the portion of our personalities. Let's show up with our real selves. It's something that we so desperately need today, maybe in our community more than in others, for various reasons we're not going to get into, but that's what we need today more than ever. Let's drop the masks. Let's show up for real in a real, authentic way. Let's see the real self in the other, and let's fill the world with love. I just want to point out, like, obviously all this is crucially important for our own journeys, and I think, like I mentioned before, it's something that I need to stay hyper conscious of all the time. And I think back to some of the things that I've done. I think back to Sparks from Berdichev, for example, my first book. And sometimes I wonder, like, what was that, What was that? Was that an authentic desire to really just share so much value and teaching to the world? There was certainly that element. But at the same time, like, I can't pretend like there wasn't this need at the same time to, like, okay, I matter because, like, here, I did something, I published a book, right? I constantly, as a person who's a content creator, as a person who's a teacher, as a person who's in a public sphere, I constantly am checking in with myself. Like, what's my motivation here? And I look back at that and I don't reject it out of hand to say, like, hey, so much of what I've done is powered by this need to, to feel full. Obviously, there's so much holiness and there's so much good intention that's healthy and positive. And, like, it's not zero-sum game. So you don't look back at everything you've done and be like, whoa, that was all the mask. But we do need to know that we're rooted in a place of openness to the point that, like, we genuinely don't need it. We don't need it. Why we choose to engage with it? Because it's a meaningful thing and it's true, and it's like, I want to fill the world with light. That's good. That's good. But to get to a place where we no longer need it, and however relevant this is for our own inner world, the same exact thing is true between us and Hashem. So many times we show up in a religious context, in davening and in learning and in yeshiva and in seminary and in, being a husband and wife. And we do so just by trying to project a mask to Hashem. We're trying to basically say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hey, look, here, I matter, and here's why. And there's something unsatisfying about that relationship. There's a part of us that still doesn't feel full. And the reason is because we're not showing up with vulnerability. We're not showing up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and saying, Ribbana da'al Makoila, like, I'm okay sharing not just my successes with you and my siyam hashasses and all of my, shuckling and shemana esreis and my kashrus and the highest standards of chumras here, there, and the other place, and the best shidduchim for our children and my kids are in the best yeshivas and all this stuff. This is all, like, this is good. We should strive for all of this and much more. But at the same time, we have to be able to come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with all of us, not leaving any bit behind. And I'll end with just this. It just came to mind. Reb Shlomo Carlebach used to teach that the deeper reason for why we turn around on Friday night after Lecha Dodi for Boi Kala, Boi B'Shalom, is that is on the simple level, because that's where the sun's setting, so we turn around, and that's where Shabbos is sort of coming in, right? But Reb Shlomo says something deeper. He says, oh, you're about to walk into Shabbos? He says, in order to have an authentic experience of Shabbos, which really, in a certain way, encapsulates the whole of Judaism, which is the relationship between Hashem and Am Yisrael, ois hi beini ubein bnei Yisrael, ois hi la'olam. It's a sign of the relationship between me and you, says Hashem. He says, you have to walk into Shabbos with all of you. All the parts of you, not just the nice parts that took a shower and are dressed, to your Shabbos finest. He says, so right before we are being Mekabel Shabbos, we turn around to look back into the week. And we turn around and say, is there any part of me that I'm leaving behind? Is there any part of me that I'm not yet comfortable bringing into the context of my relationship with Hashem? Because if there is, then I'm not ready to really walk in fully into an immersive relational experience with Hashem that Judaism was always intended to be. I hope that I continue to think about these ideas. I hope that there's some value here for you. And remember that you're not alone. You're not alone. Everyone to one degree or another is traumatized to one extent or another. Everyone is feeling this essential void. And I hope that together we can encourage each other, be open, encourage openness. And it takes courage, it's brave to go into a relationship and say, listen, I feel like it's the mask of me connecting to the mask of you, and I just want to share like what's really going on. Have those difficult conversations. Watch Be'ezus Hashem in your life, and I hope in my life as well. Watch how the bond is taken from 0 to 60 like that. In our interpersonal relationships, and in the all-encompassing relationship between our souls and their source, the master of heaven and earth. Thanks for listening.